Our guest today is a bona fide genius. Luis von Ahn is a math prodigy with a knack for inventing things. At 28, he won the MacArthur Fellowship, also called the Genius Grant. He was a computer science professor at the Carnegie Mellon University before he gave up teaching to build the wildly popular language learning app Duolingo.
Luis co-founded the app in 2011 with primarily one thought: that language learning should be free and fun. In the last 15 years, Duolingo has reached several 100 million accounts worldwide. According to its latest investor presentation, it had over 131 million monthly active users as of the first quarter of 2025. People that take its 100 courses that teach 40 plus languages. One of the first apps to really go big on gamification and marked by quirky, irreverent, random humor, Duolingo, with its mascot the green owl, has been actually called quite the case in branding, marketing, and even behavioral psychology. So, in today's Corner Office conversation, we have Luis himself to talk about Duolingo's journey, his own arc from CAPTCHA, which he invented, to chatbots. How does he continue to make language learning fun for more than 500 million people? How does he see AI as a tool, a catalyst, or competitor? Will the green owl eat a chunk of traditional academia? And of course, where does India stand for Duolingo as a market, and how is it growing? Listen on, it's Tuesday, the 13th of May. We are your hosts, Anirban Chowdhury and Himani Kothari. This is the Morning Brief.
Hi, Luis, and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Luis, you're the CEO and co-founder of Duolingo, but that's not how you started. You also invented the most annoying thing known to humans, CAPTCHA. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with CAPTCHA and what learnings did you take from that to Duolingo?
Let me first start by saying that it is not the most annoying thing known to humans. It is annoying, but there are probably more annoying things. So yeah, CAPTCHA is a test that you have to pass to prove that you're a human on the internet. Common forms of it are these distorted characters that you have to type, or more common nowadays is having to click or tap on all the different traffic lights or all the different bicycles in a grid of images. I helped invent that about 25 years ago. The reason this started was because before CAPTCHAs, anybody could write a program to do a lot of kind of bad things on the internet. So for example, anybody could write a program to obtain millions of email accounts for free. And what a CAPTCHA does is it makes sure that only a human can get email accounts, or only a human can buy tickets on Ticketmaster or something like that. And the reason it worked is because, at least at the time, 25 years ago, computers weren't able to, for example, read distorted characters of text. As time has gone on, most of the things that computers couldn't do, now computers can do. We still have a few things that humans can do that computers cannot, but that number of things is, quickly disappearing.
That's fantastic, Luis. And as Himani just said, lessons from CAPTCHA would definitely have come in handy in building Duolingo as this really tech-advanced sort of pioneer in, gamified learning. But from what I understand, and this is to take you to the very initial days of, conceptualizing Duolingo, one of the initial hiccups was just designing the modules. So at the start, you created the Spanish module, and your co-founder made the German module, and both of you realized that they were really, really boring, right? So what are the kind of changes that you made? What kind of heuristics did you bring in to make the app engaging and interesting?
Yeah, this is exactly what happened. When we started working on Duolingo, I am a native Spanish speaker, so I decided to make the first Spanish course. And then my co-founder is a native German speaker, and he made the first German course. And the idea we had is we were going to learn each other's language through Duolingo. But we found that we couldn't get ourselves to even do our lessons because it was so boring. And that's when we learned something that still to this day we believe to be true, which is the hardest thing about learning something by yourself is staying motivated. So we started making Duolingo as much of a game as we could. We started, for example, at first the lessons lasted half an hour. Then we made them last 2 minutes. We also made it so that, there were progress bars everywhere that you had to fill. Every time you finished a lesson, you got points. There's a lot of animation, etc. So that made Duolingo, really successful. By the time we launched, it really felt like a game. I mean, it's entirely free to learn on Duolingo. Yes, you can subscribe to remove the ads, but you can learn entirely for free as much as you want. And the combination of free
I think
and
91% of your users are free.
Correct. 91% of our monthly active users use the free version.
Right. And also what really startled me was that another data point that I saw, that 80% of your users in the US and UK had not learned a new language before. Is that correct?
That's correct. 80% of our users were not learning a language before Duolingo, which what's amazing about that's in the US and UK. It varies per country. But in the US and UK, that's true. And what's amazing about that is that we really are growing the market. And so we're very happy with that.
Luis, I read the Duolingo handbook. It's quirky. It uses unhinged humor. Something that's also reflected in your marketing strategy that more often than not goes viral. What was the thinking behind this decision? Is this part of the gamification experience or is there more to it?
Yeah, I mean, we, as a company, we don't take ourselves too seriously. One of our operating principles is make it fun. In terms of our marketing, the reason it goes so viral is because we have this owl mascot, this green owl that does a lot of unhinged things. And that the way that started, that was a bit of an accident. It started because our own users would look at the notifications that Duolingo sends you, sometimes are passive aggressive. And our own users started making memes on the internet for them about how the owl was willing to even kidnap your family for you to do your lesson. And then what we did is we started leaning into this. And over time, we just, a whole personality emerged in social media for us. And by now, it's very successful. I mean, we recently had this campaign where the owl faked his own death. And it got 1.7 billion impressions on social media. And the cost of that campaign for us was $10,000. The only thing we paid for was basically making the videos that we put out. So we're very happy with that.
Luis, in a way, your initial success came from fighting bots or AI. Now you use a lot of AI in your business. Which side do you like better, with or against AI?
Oh, I much prefer with AI. I mean, what we're doing with Duolingo is we really are, teaching hundreds of millions of people different subjects, mostly languages. And AI is beautiful in that it is really a scalable way to teach people. I mean, human teachers are great, but most people in the world don't have access to a great human teacher. And fortunately, as AI advances, it can get close to as good as a human teacher.
And Luis, if you were starting out today, what would you do differently given the advances in Gen AI? Would you still have started Duolingo today?
Yeah, I would. I really do think that education is a major thing that's going to change with AI. I believe that no matter what, even if there are no jobs, I believe that humans still need to be educated. And I think education is going to be done by computers. So yeah, I would still do that.
What kind of new trends are you seeing in learning patterns or in demand for new languages, and how are you reacting to them?
Learning patterns are remaining the same. I mean, people at the end of the day are people and they continue learning the same thing. Demand for languages does change. Of late, the last few years, we're seeing a lot of demand to learn Korean. That has to do with K-pop and K-dramas.
Right. And universities, yes.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of demand to learn Korean. That is a change over time.
So I have a question here. So on your India strategy, Luis, so for example, what I read is that you have a lot of, Bengali to English, Tamil to English, but you don't have Indian language modules on your app. Do you see that changing? Because that would really, lead to an explosion in your users if volume game is what you're going for in future.
Yeah, we do see that changing. That is something that's on the roadmap, that where we're going to teach other Indian languages, between different Indian languages. So yeah, that is something that we're going to do over time.
Okay.
Is India a focus market for you, Louis?
Yes, it is. About 12 markets that we pay attention to. India is one of them. And the main reason India is a focus market for us is just because the size of the market is huge in terms of number of people, obviously. And we expect that over time, we're taking the long view with India. We expect that over time it will monetize. I mean, at the moment it's not monetizing very well, but we expect that over time it will monetize.
Louis, could you give me a sense of how big is the business in India in terms of number of users? How much time do Indians spend on Duolingo?
Yeah, our business in India, in terms of users, is growing quite a bit. We have millions of monthly active users, and they really do spend quite a bit of time. And people in India, mainly learning English. We're very happy with that. One thing that is not unique about India, but it is striking about India, is that there's a real reluctance to pay for the paid version. So in worldwide, 9% of our users, of our monthly active users, pay for the paid version to remove ads. In India, that percentage is well under 1%. So as a business, in terms of revenue, it's not a big business in India. But as a business in terms of users, it's quite a big business. I believe it's the 5th largest country in terms of users.
Do you have a strategy yet to make the Indian user pay?
No, but if you have good ideas, let me know. The thing is,
we're trying to do the same.
I also come from a poor country. I come from Guatemala, which is it's a relatively poor country. What I know, if I look at my family, is that people go through great lengths to not pay. I think over time this is going to change a little bit. I think people are going to be more okay with digital subscriptions. But at the moment, when we have, geographies that have lower GDP per capita, they don't pay for our product very much because our free version is too good.
Louis, does the data tell you anything about which nationality is good at learning a language?
Yeah, I mean, there's differences. Yes, there's differences, for example, and a bunch of different kind of behaviors. For example, the most committed ones are Japanese. So Japanese people are very committed. They may not be very good at learning, but they're very committed. And the most social ones are Brazilians. So they share everything. Generally, for learning a language, in terms of whether you're good at it or not, the two things that matter is the language that you're learning. If it is closer to your native language, it is easier for you. So, for example, Spanish speakers learning Portuguese or something like that, that's relatively easy. But, for example, English speakers learning Chinese, that's hard. The other thing that ends up mattering for learning a language is how, I don't know what word to use for that. It's either outgoing or how okay you are at making mistakes. The more you are okay at making mistakes, the better you are at learning a language. And this is one reason, for example, why people in Japan are not very good at speaking, because they're very afraid of making mistakes. So they never speak. And if you never speak, you never get practice, and so you never get better at it. But there are certain types of people that are just a lot more okay sounding not great. And that type of person usually is much better at learning a language than people who are afraid of making mistakes. I personally am very bad at learning languages because I'm afraid of making mistakes.
Louis, skeptics say that Duolingo is good, but it's only good up to a certain point. It won't really help you learn a language. For instance, if you take me, I'm nearing a 2,000-day course of French, but can I really speak French? Je ne crois pas. So how do you answer that?
Yeah, it takes a very long time to learn a language, any language. And this is not just with Duolingo. I mean, you need to spend 500 hours or 1,000 hours to learn a language. So even if you have a 2,000-day streak, if you're only doing it 3 minutes a day, you just have to put the time in. I mean, with Duolingo, it feels so easy. So people are like, well, I should have learned it by now. But the reality is you just have to put the time in, because you have to learn, 10 to 20,000 words. You have to learn how to use them. You have to learn all the grammar, the pronunciation, etc. But it does work if you put in the time, and it works quite well. I mean, if you go to duolingo.com/efficacy, we have a lot of research that proves that it works pretty well.
Luis, tell me, how do you bring in human elements like sarcasm or humor when an app is teaching a language? Now, another data point that I saw was that a few years back, 50% of your modules were handmade and the other half computer generated. But that human chunk, that 50%, has been getting smaller and smaller over the years. So are the human elements that come into teaching a language becoming insignificant as well?
For beginner users, most of this doesn't really matter, like humor and things like that. If you're a beginner, you're not going to understand humor. It's just as simple as that. You're not going to understand sarcasm, etc. Because when you're a beginner, you're just mainly trying to figure out what the word is for hello. This is for more advanced users. And yes, for more advanced users, we do put in things like, we try to put in things like humor and culture and, how different cultures use this type of stuff. Historically, computers were not very good at that. But over the last 2 years with large language models, computers are about as good as humans at all of this, human humor, poetry, rhyming, all of that. So computers are, at this point, all of our modules are made by computers, and it's about as good as a human teacher.
So you've brought me to the subject of LLM, and why Duolingo is such a beautiful fit in the AI LLM world is because the middle letter is language, large language models, and you're a language app, and you also have embedded it very well. You have GPT-4 in Duolingo Plus, for instance. But is there a time when the pace at which AI large language models like ChatGPT, etc., are developing, they will be competition and can overtake you? Or is it always going to be fast adaptation and just sort of piggybacking on their development as well to grow your app and expand it a little further in terms of the space and the contours and the scope that it can go towards?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Already, large language models are very good at teaching you a language. You can learn a language with ChatGPT, for example. That is true already.
Right.
But that by itself it's not competition, and it's also not impressive. I mean, the reality is you can learn a language with a book. It's entirely possible to learn a language by reading a book. Yeah, you can also learn a language by doing ChatGPT. But what is unique about Duolingo, and that's what I think is hard to match, is that we keep people engaged. That's the thing that is difficult. I mean, books, you could learn a language with a book. In fact, you can learn anything you want with a book. You can learn quantum physics with a book if you want. It's just most people don't do it.
Right.
And what we are really good at is keeping you engaged.
Right.
Luis, going back to the question of LLMs, I think you also have a partnership with OpenAI. You've rolled out the video chat feature. How much of your incremental global monetization is coming from AI and LLM, Gen AI and LLMs now?
What has happened is that for the video call feature, which is where you get to practice language or conversation with an AI, what we did is we put it in our highest subscription tier. So we have the free version, we have Super Duolingo, which is our middle tier, and we added a new higher tier called Duolingo Max. That one, it accounts for about 5% of our payers. So, but growing very fast.
Luis, talking about the other conflict, which is, this whole question of whether the owl will eat academia. Now, I know there are many universities in this world which have accepted Duolingo's courses and modules. But do you see Duolingo and apps like these as aids or alternatives to traditional form of academics or linguistics or teaching a language? Do you see them coexisting, or do you see a conflict or a competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. The reality is that not everybody has access to a teacher or a school or a university. We would like to be able to teach those people if they don't have access to a university or something. We would like them to learn as well. I don't think that that Duolingo is going to substitute schools. There's a lot of things that schools do that is necessary. Sure. However, I do believe that the usage of Duolingo in classrooms, it keeps increasing. And I think over time we're going to just see that human teachers are going to concentrate on the thing that humans are good at, whereas some of the stuff that computers are good at is what computers are going to concentrate on. So, for example, computers are infinitely patient. They can do repetition 1,000,000 times, much more patient than an average teacher. So I think that's the type of stuff that the computers are going to be being used for.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you, Luis, is expanding the scope of Duolingo. I've read about the fact that there are plans to include music and math, etc. how's that going?
Yes, already on Duolingo you can learn math and music. That's already true.
Okay.
We're about to add chess as well. So over time, we're going to be adding many more subjects. Math and music are doing very well. They're growing faster than the languages. Of course, we still have more users learning languages than we do math and music because, we've been doing languages for more than 10 years, whereas math and music has just been 1 or 2 years. But they're growing very fast.
Luis, Duolingo is a Gen Z-focused platform with liberal values. Is that the cohort most of the learners come from?
We have learners of every single age. I mean, starting at around age 7. So we have learners from age 7 to 100. Yeah, there's probably a little heavier representation in people who are maybe 10 to 30. But we really have learners of every age.
And Luis, with how quickly AI is evolving, do you still see people learning languages 20 years from now? Won't that be such a 2025 thing to do?
I think so. I mean, look, it's very hard to know what's going to happen in 100 years or 50 years. But most of our users on Duolingo fall into two big buckets. One is people who are learning language as a hobby. I think hobbies will remain. This is like playing chess, for example. Computers have been better than humans at chess since 1997. But people still learn chess and play chess. So that's a hobby. And that's about half of our users. The other half of our users are learning English. And, they just need to learn English for kind of, their jobs or really doing a lot of things in the world. And I don't think that that's going to go away, at least anytime soon.
Do you have some data on how many hours people have or people usually spend on Duolingo on a daily basis, a month or a year, or have already spent since its inception? Any kind of figure?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we do. I don't know what comes off the top of my head. In terms of time, I mean, I know this. I know every single day, it's about 1.2 billion exercises are solved by people, and each exercise takes about 20 seconds. So that's, I'm sure, millions of hours per day.
Right. And also, I think at some point, 10% of your users were clocking 365 days in a year. So every single day they would come on the app. That's the regularity that you would see, right?
Yeah, that's actually, yes. We have 10 million daily active users that have a streak longer than 365. That means they have not missed a day in the last year or longer. And yeah, we're very proud of that. That just speaks about how engaging the product is.
What's your most popular language combination?
Combination, I believe it is
so
English speakers learning Spanish.
Right. Luis, there were reports last year on how Duolingo was forced to remove all LGBTQ references in Russia after warning from the Kremlin. We're seeing something similar now in the US with a lot of companies rolling back their DEI policies after Trump. Will we see any such change in Duolingo, or will the brand's tone remain liberal?
No, we'll remain with our values. I mean, in certain geographies, it's just illegal and to do certain things. And of course, we are going to follow the local laws of every country that we operate in. We operate in every single country in the world, and we follow local laws. In the United States, I am hoping that there will be no laws that get changed for this type of stuff. So we're going to continue being who we are as a company.
I think that's a great note on which to end the conversation. Thank you so much, Luis, for joining us on The Morning Brief.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by me and Rajas Naik, sound designed by Amrit Reggie. A new episode of The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Keep listening and have a good rest of the week.